Okay, let's go.
Hello everyone and welcome back to LDF Designs. In today's video I'm going to be working on these boards that I prepped ahead of time. These are solid walnut and they are kind of rough cuts. They are left over from somebody's project and I have several of them, and I decided I wanted to make a 360-degree piece of work, or at least multiple pieces. So these panels I have painted with chalk paint, and then I used some India ink and made some marks and dots and charcoal. I've used plaster to adhere some rusty objects and also just to create some texture. When I do a 360 degree piece of work, I usually start on the edges and apply at least 2 to 3 layers of encaustic just on the edge of the pieces. That way, then as I turn it and start working the front and back of the piece, anything that has dripped down onto the surface, I can incorporate into the work. It's always interesting to me to watch the encaustic absorb into the different materials that I use. It generally will change the color of some materials, and you just kind of have to practice and live and learn and experiment to see what happens when the encaustic hits the surface and starts to absorb in there. I actually used some wall putty, I guess. I'm not quite sure what to call it. My daughter needed some spackle to do some repair on an apartment unit that she had and had some left over. So I went ahead and used that on these pieces, and it definitely dried darker than I expected and definitely came out a much darker color when the encaustic hit it. So I just kind of worked with that color scheme. Once I got the sides done, then I go ahead and start working one of the surfaces. I do have some metal on this piece here, but it's generally flat up against the surface. And so because the surface has a lot of rough texture, it really depends on how much you want to build up that encaustic as to how you apply it. Sometimes you have to dab it into the areas to get it all covered. I purchased this paper at Amazon, or on Amazon, I believe. I'll have to see if I can find the link to that. And I really like it, but it does dry, or take the encaustic and turn quite a bit darker than maybe what I thought it was going to do when I purchased it. But I thought it would be a good match with the colors going on these pieces. I also wanted to incorporate some fabric into these, and so just kind of adding different pieces of interest and texture to the piece. Generally what I'll do is take the fabric or paper and either dip it in the encaustic, or I put a little bit of encaustic on my hot plate and then lay the piece of material or paper on it so that it can absorb the encaustic. Once it's done doing that, I will then adhere it to the surface that already has encaustic on it. You want to burnish that and then give it a quick fuse. And then in this case I went ahead and added some white encaustic over the top of those two pieces. I'm going to make some marks, and then I'm going to fill those in with some tar. If this is your first time watching my video, I often use vegetable oil as my medium, my blending medium, and or my cleanup medium. It works with tar, it works with oil paints, it works with pastels. It basically is a great cost-effective way to clean your work, and it's a safer material than some of the other different things out there that you could be using. So, over the weekend, I had gone to a big discount store and stumbled across this huge pallet full of these foam paint rollers. They were like two for 50 cents, or yeah, I think they were a quarter each. So I went ahead and picked up a few of them. I thought they might be kind of cool to, use when I was making my art. And so in this case, I am dipping some of it into the tar. I'm dipping some of it into the wax, which you'll see here shortly. And I really love the different things that I can create with these little sponge rollers. I may go back to that place and see if I can pick up a few more. At this point, I have the sides and that other surface at least to a pretty good stopping point. I do need to let it cool just a little bit, which I did do, and then I turned it over, and now I'm going to start working the other side of the piece. I'm using clear encaustic, white encaustic, and some cerulean gray, which is made by R&F. So those are the three different colors of encaustic that I have been applying to the piece. At this point, just wanting to build up some different texture with the encaustic. If you are going to work with any of the tar material, just know that it does tend to get everywhere. It multiplies, and it's very sticky, and I just highly recommend that you use gloves when you're using that material. I've come to the conclusion that I actually, in the beginning when I first started wearing the gloves, I didn't really like it, but now I'm realizing how much easier sometimes it can be to keep your hands a little bit less sticky with some of these materials that I'm using. At this point, I am taking that roller and I'm putting it on the hot panel with just a little bit of encaustic wax on it. And then I'm trying to create some circles. I'm trying to show them, if you can see them a little bit there, with the encaustic, and then going back and filling those textured spots in then with the tar. Creates a pretty cool effect. I definitely will be using this again in the future. Because I had already used some of the vegetable oil to clean the surface in this area, when I went back with the roller the second time to try to add a few more circles, it didn't adhere as well. I think the surface wasn't maybe quite as clean as it should have been, but that's okay. I went ahead and filled in what spots were there, and then I am going to give it a light fuse. I had covered up most of the fabric that I added and wanted there to be a little bit of fabric showing on the surface, so at this point I went ahead and found a small piece on my table and found a spot for that on the piece of art. When I turned the camera off, I did go ahead and add a few nails to this piece. The hammering is always loud and kind of shakes my whole room, so I don't generally do that on camera. But basically just hammered a few of my rusty nails in, and now I am going to take some thread and wind the thread around the nails. I often will dip the end of the thread into the encaustic and adhere that on somewhere. It just helps it stay in place. Once I am done with this section, I pretty much don't record a whole lot more of the finishing of this piece. I do add a few more finishing touches to it off camera, and I will have photos of it over on my Instagram page. I did record what I did to make the other two pieces as well, but I did not include that into this video, but basically just did a lot of the same techniques on those and made 3 similar pieces. Thank you so much for watching today. Again, you can find pictures of all of these in their finished state over on my Instagram.